Okay, so hi everybody, welcome. Tonight I'm doing basically just an all about decals 101 kind of stream. So if you are already an expert at decals, you can skip this one, but if maybe you want some helpful tips and tricks, if you have trouble getting your decals to look nice, if you get a lot of weird wrinkles and folds and I don't know, weird stuff happens, or it's too hard to clean up, or it's too hard to do it, or maybe you just haven't tried and you're curious about it, this is the stream. So what are we talking about when we're talking about decals? Because I'm not talking about the water slide type. This is all going to be DIY decals. So, and I will not be pronouncing it Decals. Just no. So for DIY decals, it's basically anytime you take a mat or piece of plastic. Plastic baggies will work in a pinch, but the best thing is either a silicone nail mat or these silicone rounds, anything like that dried polish will readily peel off of. And, you know, paint your whatever it is you're going to paint on it, and then let it dry, peel it up, and apply it to your nail. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about a decal. Now, there's a lot of different things that you can do with that. So fluid art, for instance, is very commonly done using decals because it's difficult, not impossible, but difficult to get a nice fluid art design on the nail directly without just making an enormous mess. Generally speaking, that's a complicated sort of thing to do. And, you know, there are tricks for it, but generally speaking, a lot of people that do fluid art do it as a decal. You can also use decals if you want to paint a very, very detailed, like hand paint a very detailed design to put on your dominant hand, but you're not good at painting with your non-dominant hand. So for me, I can do simple stuff with my non-dominant hand on my dominant hand. But once it gets too complex, I'm scuppered. There's no way I'm going to be able to do that. And so, you know, using a decal can be a good way to do that. So you just paint directly onto the mat and then let it dry and then lift it up and apply it. You can also use magnets for some sort of more complex magnetic designs, which I've done a couple of times in the past with tiny magnets, doing little arrangements, and letting them dry like with the magnets underneath. That can be a really good way to do it. It also can be a much more effective way to use magnetic polishes that otherwise have very weak pull. What else do we use them for? Oh, resizing stampers. If you are, we actually mentioned this last week. I was using the resizing stamper for something and mentioned that at the time I was making a design smaller, which, you know, you can take off the whole head to apply it, but when you're making something bigger, you can't take off the whole head because it's all, you know, you need to have the pressure from behind. So you're stamping like this, and obviously you can't see, you know, it's really hard to see exactly where you're placing it when you're making it bigger. And so a good way to do that is to stamp onto the decal. And so that can be another really good reason to use decals. So, and I'm sure there are other really good reasons to use decals as well, but, you know, those are a few that I commonly come across. So I did do a little bit of setup in advance. I did make some little decals earlier on today, and I did these quite a few hours ago because I wanted to be able to show you how time factors into this. So I'll start with this. So I have some fluid art decals and some that are just a single layer of nail polish, because this is going to dry extremely fast. And I did these, oh gosh, not quite I would say not quite 10 hours ago, maybe 9 hours ago now. So they've been drying for a very long time. So this is something you want to consider when you're doing decals, because the longer they dry, the more brittle they're going to become. So if you were to peel these off, they do tend to pull very easily when they're very dry. If you pull this off, it's a very thin one, so it's still fairly flexible, but it will tend to be a little bit more brittle around the edges. And when you apply it, you might have some issues. When it's very thin like this, it's usually not quite as bad, but it is more prone to cracking when it's very, very dry. So again, same kind of thing here. This is going to be a much thicker one because this is a fluid art one. And so the fluid art ones are, you know, several layers, or not really several layers, but like a much thicker sort of amount of polish. And so when they're thick and they have been allowed to dry too long, they have more of a tendency, especially if you have a strong curve to your nail, they're more likely to wrinkle up. And so if you've had this issue with them wrinkling, we're going to talk about some ways to avoid that. Now, a way to avoid that, if you just have sort of a regular, you know, thing like this or this, where there's nothing that's going to streak particularly badly, is that you can rehydrate it with nail polish. Or you can either use a clear coat or a regular top coat. I don't recommend using a super fast drying top coat because it tends to wet it a little bit too much and then dry a little bit too fast to work with as well. But you can brush a layer of quick dry top coat or regular top coat or a regular clear coat over top, and that will rehydrate it, give it a little while to just be dry enough to peel it off of there, and it's going to be able to sort of move a little better, bend a little better, and it'll even stretch. So let me show you. I also did, so this was just just a marble, a drag marble kind of thing. And this one I also did probably 8 or 9 hours ago. And it's fairly thick. And this one, definitely, if I was to try to apply this with this thickness and at this dryness, it would definitely like start to fold and wrinkle. And that's just because it happens the same with paper, right? If you try and fold a flat thing that is rigid over something that is curved, it's going to fold. So the way around that, or a way around that I really like, is, I made other decals. Where did they go? Here. Okay. So I made these ones just a little while before stream, and hopefully they are dry enough to peel up. So these ones, I think I started about 40 minutes before stream. So they're much softer. They are a little more delicate to pick up. They may stretch and tear if you're not very careful about peeling them up. But the advantage to that is that they actually will be more pliable for when you're mounting them. And so I personally tend to aim for 20-ish minutes depending on the thickness, so that they still have some stretch. So this one here, if I try and pull it, I have to pull pretty hard and it's going to break rather than stretching very much. Whereas this one that has not dried for, oh geez, if I can even lift the bloody thing up. This one that has not dried as long, if I start to gently pull it, you can see that it immediately starts to stretch out, okay? So this is a really nice level of pliability Obviously, you don't want to stretch it. It will end up developing some holes in it and whatnot in the weak spots if you start to stretch it out. What that does mean, though, is that when you start to put it over your nail, if you get to a point where you're like, oh, this is, it's starting to fold a little bit, instead of letting it wrinkle, you can sort of gently pull it over and stretch it over that area instead of having it fold over that area. So you're basically ending up with fewer wrinkles when you do it that way. This one might even still be, yeah, this one's still too wet. This was a drag marble that actually I did as a magnet. This is a velvet magnet. So I basically draped it over top of my velvet magnet here and let it dry on top of there. So you can do that kind of thing if you incorporate a magnetic in with your drag marbles or fluid marbles or fluid art designs, which can be a lot of fun. I find velvet seems to be more effective with these than trying to do a cat eye or something. I've done cat eye, it does work, but because the magnetic particles are sort of more broken up, it's less obvious. So that would be another good use case for something like this. You can, to some extent, do some marbling, drag marbling on your nail with magnetic polish. It's totally possible. People do drag marble directly on the nail all the time. Again, though, it just tends to get a little bit messy, and because it does have to be thicker, you end up with very thick layer of lacquer drying on your nail instead of thinner layers that we know will dry faster and be less annoying. So that's sort of the time component, and it also addresses a lot of how you end up with having those wrinkles and such. Now I do want to do a layer of top coat to sort of try and soften one of these ones up, and so you can see a little bit how it will soften it and make it a little bit more pliable. It still will not ever be as pliable as a much fresher decal would have been, but it will help. So if you have a decal that you make it one day intending to do your nails later on that night, and then oh geez, you didn't get time to do it, you got called away, whatever, you can somewhat rehydrate them and make them usable. Because otherwise the next day your decals tend to be way too stiff to use, way too brittle, unless they were incredibly thick, and even then they will tend to fold a lot. Are there any questions so far? I feel like I'm just talking. I'm going to take a sip. Okay. You can also ask questions while I'm talking if you want. So I mentioned, I'm going to let that sit for a bit and soften up, but then also start to dry a little bit. Could you paint a layer of thinner on them? You could. I probably would not necessarily advise doing thinner, pure thinner, because it has a tendency to break things down just a little bit too much when they're completely dry like this. I can do a test. Hang on. But what I might suggest rather than pure thinner would be to use something like the DRK, the Magic Effect for magnetic polishes stuff. This, which is, as far as I can tell, a mix of like a little bit of either base or top coat or something with a bunch of thinner in it. I think it's just super thinned down top coat. So this is what I would normally suggest if you wanted to use something other than top coat. The only thing is that it might be more prone to causing some streaking, because it does tend to sort of, yeah, it's causing some streaking in here. So, and I think with thinner it will be even more so. You see that, those streaks that going this direction between the white and black areas, especially over the white. So if you had, I'm going to show the YouTube camera as well. So if you had, you know, like a stamped design or something, that would really mess it up quite badly. I'm also going to just soften this a little bit. So this is going to be pure thinner. I will try brushing that on. I think the same thing is going to happen to a large extent, but whoop, shit. That was good. That was really good. Yeah, and I certainly would not suggest either of those over like stamped nail art or anything that you don't want to look smeary, because either one of them is going to really really cause some serious streaking. Whereas, where is it here? With this one, it didn't particularly cause any serious streaking in there. Like, it's still possible that it could cause a bit of streaking with regular top coat, but I wouldn't expect it to be nearly as severe as what we see in here. So we'll set these aside to dry again a bit, and revisit those. So the other reason why you might want to use a decal would be if you're like hand painting something, or if you wanted to do some stamping that you wanted to make bigger. So let's just go ahead and put down a base. I was playing with pinks and greens today because I've been reading the book that Wicked, the movie, is based on. The book itself is also called Wicked. At least the first book is called Wicked. I think it's a series. And so I'm like, I'm late, but I'm fully on the pink and green bandwagon now. And there, I've caught up with y'all. So say you wanted to stamp these cute little trees that are on here. There aren't any like big trees like this, but these ones are pretty small. So if I wanted to make those ones bigger, and I wanted to use my resizer for that, that would be really hard to apply nice and straight on the nail. But if I instead use a decal and stamp it on there, it doesn't matter how straight it is. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit off center. I'm going to be able to place it on the nail exactly how I want it. And so that's a really nice use case for decals that I think is underutilized. So I'm just going to use, where am I? We'll need my resizing stamper, and you just get everything together here. Get some polish. This one's not actually a stamping polish. Hopefully it will work well enough here. Okay. So yeah, so it's not a stamping polish, as I said. It did okay, but it's not perfect. But since we're just doing this to sort of show how it works, go ahead and take this one here. And we'll stamp that one on. That one came out pretty well. Maybe I'll take that one as well. We'll stamp two of them. All right. So I've resized it. This hopefully is dry enough. It got a little fluff on it somehow. That's always nice. Why are you fluffy? Okay. So I don't have to worry about the placement too much as long as it's sort of on the green somewhere. There we go. So we have those. They're bigger than they were on the plate. So I've accomplished my goal of getting a slightly larger version of what's on the plate. And I'll be able to wait until that dries and then apply it to a nail, and I won't have to worry about whether it's centered properly or not. Confirmed you can hear kitty snores. Lucky you. That would be Jammy Dodgers behind me. Okay. So the other thing that I mentioned is when you want to hand paint something that's a little more detailed than you can really manage on the nail, especially, you know, for me, I do this sometimes when I want to do something on my right hand with my left hand, because my left hand is not nearly as good at painting stuff. You know what? Let's put a little. Let's paint a little scene here with that one tree. Let's put a little. What are we gonna do? A little house? Should we do a little house? Let's do a little house. We'll do something that's complicated enough that I would not be able to do it with my non-dominant hand. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time at this because this is sort of just to give you a sense of, you know, when you might want to use this sort of thing. So we'll get a little house there. Give a little chimney. Get a little smoke coming out of it. And I'm just gonna make that smoke a little smokier. Get a little thinner here. This is the wrong brush to use for smoke, but whatever. It'll do the trick, right? Good enough. Oh, it looks like this house is maybe on fire. We have done too much with the smoke. That's okay. We'll back it off a little here. Okay. There we go. Look at that. I used my fingers and it kind of took some of it away. Brilliant. It's almost like I did it on purpose. Okay, so I have a little scene here that I can put on my right hand, on one of the nails on my right hand. I wouldn't have been able to paint that competently with my left hand, so I've done it with my right hand, and now I'll be able to, once this is dry, place it on my one of my nails. Now, a thing that is going to make this a lot easier is to have a little bit more thickness, and I also like to have a nice large buffer area when I do this, because I find that a slightly thicker, not too thick, you don't want like a hugely thick decal, but a slightly thicker decal tends to peel a little bit better than a really, really super thin one. I often find that the edges with thinner decals are more likely to get a little messed up when you're taking the decal off. So I am actually just going to do a little bit of this is just a seal glaze I'm going to put on here so it doesn't streak when I'm not going to end up using that other one. I'll let that dry and then I'll top coat that, and then we will peel that later on in the stream. For now though, I want to check in with our experiment and see. So this was using the Magic Effect top coat to re-soften an older decal that I had made earlier in the evening. And it definitely feels a little softer, a little more pliable. It's now stretching nicely, which means that that was a pretty effective way to re-soften it. But it did leave some streaking. So if you have streak-prone polishes involved, like creme blacks and whites, probably not the best option to do, but does work. The thinner alone, kind of just, yeah, it's interesting. It definitely, oh no, it really, it's slightly more pliable than the other one was, but it's still quite brittle. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I would use thinner only. I guess in a pinch you could maybe do it, but yeah, I don't think I would recommend thinner only. My preferred way is to use just a top coat that isn't a super fast drying top coat, which is what I used here. And this one came out quite nicely. It's got some nice pliability and stretch to it. I don't want to stretch it too much because I actually want to put this one on. So that leads us to the next step, applying a decal. How do you want to apply a decal? There's a few different ways to do it. So I know that there are a lot of people who will place a decal onto a stamper head upside down. You can see this was a fluid art one, and they tend to, because of the way I do my fluid art, they tend to be pretty unattractive on the back side of them. So you can place it there and then apply it where you want it, or you can just, place it wherever you want it. Some people will cut it down to approximately the size of their nail first. If I know I'm going to be, using one decal for multiple nails, then sometimes I will do that. Another thing that I sometimes like to do is make large fluid art decals or drag marble decals and cut them into strips or shapes and apply them onto the nail in various different ways so that it's not the entire nail covered. There's lots of really fun ways to play with decals. Actually, another thing that I sometimes like to do is use little shaped hole punches. So I have some that are like stars and hearts and stuff. So you can make something like a fun fluid art or whatever decal, or even just plain regular a simple color, and punch out and basically make yourself confetti that can then be applied to the nail. So when you want to apply to the nail, obviously you're going to need to have a way to make it stick, because the decal itself is not sticky right now. Your nails are not. But yeah, if what you're looking to do is just apply to the nail, to a naked nail, my favorite method of doing that is to use a sticky base. So the one that I'm using here is not actually marketed as a sticky base. It's marketed as a quick dry base. This is from Hollow Taco, it's a very similar base to Orly Bonder. If you use that one, that's a great sticky base. You can use any base though. It's just the advantage to the quick dry base from Hollow Taco and the the rubberized base coat and the bonding base coat, those kinds of things, the sticky bases, are designed for this, and so they tend to stay sticky for a much longer time after they're otherwise sort of dry. So, you know, they sort of have this tacky quality to them. Yeah, that's my preference. Let it dry for a minute or so. If you're using a regular base or something, you usually have to let it dry for several minutes, in my experience. So if you want to do the stamper application method, which I know a lot of people find easiest to do, I don't usually use the stamper application method, but I will here, just so that you can see what we're doing. So you can kind of decide which part of the decal you want and where, you know, like what direction you want to line it up, and then you're basically just going to press it on just as you would a stamp, and it will attach itself there. Now, if you have a fairly flat nail, or if your decal is quite pliable, because it hasn't dried too much, or because you have rehydrated it, this should be a pretty smooth operation. And then you can just go in and sort of pressure cut away the edges, or cut them with a small pair of scissors. So I see a lot of people go in with scissors. I personally tend to go in with this, it's supposed to be a cuticle tool. Yeah, I tend to use this as my first step. Press around and sort of define the edges of your nail. This sort of just helps figure out where the sides are. And then I like to do a gentle pressure with this edge, which it's beveled, but it's not like sharp. So it doesn't hurt to do it, and you shouldn't need to press hard. This is like a gentle pressure. This is sort of how I tend to prefer to do mine, because I just find it a little easier than pulling out the scissors every time. I will also demonstrate the scissor method, because I know a lot of people like to use that. Okay. Now, what I usually do when I'm doing this, I don't want to like pull it this way, because that can sometimes mess up the sides. So what I like to do is break or cut here, so that then I can pull away from the nail this way. And if your decal is still quite pliable, you can often just sort of pull it down against the nail to get rid of the overhang, if you have a little bit of free edge. Otherwise, you'll have to use scissors, or, you know, do a pressure cut against the sides. So we don't have too much to clean up, but there is a little bit. Yeah, Ray says, I feel like the scissors are less precise. It's hard to get the angle right. I feel the same way, which is why I do it this way instead. I really find it significantly easier. But I will demonstrate the other method as well, because I know a lot of people feel much more confident doing it that way for whatever reason, and that is valid. Whatever way you find works best for you is the way you should do it. So there's two things that I'm kind of doing here. One is that I'm cleaning up the little bits of mess at the edges, but I'm also letting a little bit of acetone get just along the edge of the decal, to sort of melt it down a little bit to seal the edges, because otherwise you can have kind of a slightly tattered edge that doesn't completely seal down to the nail. And you don't want that, because it's going to not stay good as long. It'll be more prone to peeling and whatnot. from that point. So you want to do a little bit of melting the edge, a little bit of edge cleanup at the same time. And then when you do the nail edge, I like to just sort of pat gently along the edge to just moisten. And I don't have this in view for you, I'm sorry. I have my acetone and I'm dabbing. So dab into the acetone, dab off the excess, and then pat onto the nail. You can also do a little cleanup underneath. Sometimes I have a little that gets folded under, so I'll do a little cleanup under there. And then I tend to do just a gentle tap along that free edge, just to make sure that everything is well placed and I don't feel any ridges anywhere. Okay, so that's your decal placement. Lack crying, you would be scared to cut yourself with scissors. I have absolutely stabbed my cuticle with scissors. And I don't love, that's part of why I don't love using scissors. But as long as you're careful, I think it is safe enough. It's just, yeah, you have to be extremely careful. All right, so this one did not get the rehydration treatment, and we're gonna put this on one of my longer nails that is a little more curved, and it's not too bad. So maybe we'll be able to get it without too much folding. We'll see. We'll see how this one goes. I do think I'm pretty good at applying these at this point, so hopefully it won't be an absolute clusterfuck, but I think my index might be my most curved nail, so we're gonna try the most dry decal with the most curved nail and see how we do. Actually, I don't think that's the most dry decal. Maybe it is. I don't know. It's drier than some at any rate. So we'll just give that a moment to get sticky, get tacky. Oh, Jammy's got a case of the sneezels. Hang on a second here.
Jammy Dodgers, what's going on? Oh, you got some sneezels? Jammy, you're such a good girl. You're such a good kitty. Yeah, here. Say hello to everybody. Say hello, upside down kitty. Oh, what a good girl.
Okay, you got an upside down cat. Back to this. All right, so let's go ahead and place this, I think, yeah, let's go like here. So, oh yeah, I can already tell this one's going to be a little more challenging because it has not gotten the rehydration treatment that we did for the other one. So this is sort of, I mean, not worst case scenario, but it's definitely not the optimal way to do this. I will use scissors on this one, just because I do want to show sort of how you do that. Even when I'm using scissors, I still define the area, define the edges with my cuticle pusher. And then I get my thing out that has my scissors in it because I did not get them out in advance because I forgot I was going to need them. Okay. All right, so scissors. Here, I'm going to start on this side and just get that part away. I can cut around this part a little bit. And then, of course, I'm going the... let me try flip this here. Get that curve. It helps a little bit to have the curve going the right direction if you have curved scissors, which most nail scissors are. And then when I do this part, I'm basically going to try and just use the lower one to guide around the edge of my proximal nail fold. Try desperately not to stab that skin. This is so awkward. I never do them this way, or almost never. Oh boy. Okay. All right. So I actually have more cleanup work to do with this than I did with the other one, because of using the scissors. So that's okay though. And actually I cut a little bit too much on here. This is why I don't like to use the scissors. I can't get the line quite right. Like, it's always either I leave too much overhang or I cut too much, or I just find it so much easier to do it the other method. But I know there are plenty of people that like to use the scissors, and so it is good to also see that method. If anybody here happens to be a beginner, I suspect a lot of you are not beginners at this at all. Some of you might even be looking at what I'm doing and being like, oh my god, what a fucking rookie. Who does she think she is, telling people this stuff as though she knows anything? That's okay. You don't have to be such jerks about it though. Jeez, guys. I'm doing my best. Okay, and we'll do the same melting thing. It didn't wrinkle too badly, thankfully. I don't see any major wrinkles. I think we just barely escaped that fate. If it had been much drier, I think I would have had a problem, but try and just fold that over a little bit. It is definitely a lot harder to seal the edge when it's stiffer this way. It doesn't want to like lay down nicely. I find it much easier to get good placement when it's still a little more pliable. Let's clean up the excess from the fold there. Not going to get too terribly picky about it, but all right. So that one's applied using the scissor method. And I definitely did not. You can see I don't do as good a job with it. It's a little lopsided. No, poor Peggy suffering for us. Yes, I suffer terribly for you. Okay, let's see. This should be ready for a regular top coat. Let me just put this thing away for now. Get it out of my way. Get out of my way. I'll put a regular top coat on top of this so that I will be ready to apply it soon once it has dried enough. This is the stamped plus hand painted decal to demonstrate how that would be. Obviously, if one of you were doing this, it would be a lot prettier, but I'm just demoing, so you'll have to put up with my half-assed job that I did. Okay, next thing, let's see. Why don't we do the magnetic drag marble? Let's see if it's ready to come up. So this is the other part of it, is sort of knowing when it's dry enough, because, you know, we sort of talked about like what happens when it's too dry, but it's of course, you know, possible to try working with it too early. For me, I basically judge it by how easily it comes off. If it is, see how here, this spot here, it's starting to pull and stick a little bit. That indicates that that spot is not really quite dry enough. It's probably a little thicker there, but it's right at the edge, so I'm not going to worry about it in this case. But if I came across a spot like that earlier, I would just stop and, you know, lay it back down flat and set it aside and just wait for later. Because yeah, you can see that area was not dry enough yet. But that's okay. The rest of it is just barely dry enough. So we will still work with it. All right, I'm gonna do this on my pinky. And this one I'm gonna do the way that I normally do them, which does not involve using the stamper. I literally just place them. So I'll do that. Get this dry. Yeah, for this one, this is the magnetic one. So for this, I basically, you know, used, where's my mat that I used for it? I don't know. It was one of these. Basically, I just, oh yeah, it was this one. I put stripes of the magnetic and a creme. Did a drag marble swirl of them that I did not do very well. And then I placed this on top of my my DIY horseshoe velvet magnet thing and just let it dry there. So you can see I've got a nice magnet thing happening that I think is going to be pretty cute. So let's just do this. So this is how I normally do it. I literally just place it. I don't normally bother with the stamper head. I just did that for y'all because I know a lot of people do them that way. You're gonna see the real deal exactly how I do them. Slightly, just barely dry enough, almost a little bit too wet because I want it nice and pliable. And then I do the press fit or press cut thing. Oh, this is almost too wet to do this. It's so close to being too wet. Oh yeah, look at that. That's the spot that didn't want to peel. I should have waited like 5 more minutes, but the nice thing about it being this wet is that you can do this fun thing where you take the 2 edges and you pinch them and you just pull this way. So I'm pulling that direction and it just cuts itself. Big fan of that. Cuts itself against your free edge. Okay, clean up. I got that one spot that was too wet, got sticky on me. And so the nice thing about doing it that way for me is that I find I always manage to cover the entire nail when I do it that way. It's a little bit of a silly method, but and again, it only really works if it's pretty pliable. But yeah, I find with the scissors I end up cutting inaccurately and have gaps on the nail, usually at the sides, sometimes also at the proximal nail fold. And then we clean up and melt the edge, same way as we did on the other ones. And I think this is going to turn out to be a real cute little nail with that velvet magnetic action. So another thing that I want to show you on this is doing a decal with more complex magnetic forms, because it's a really nice way to do that. Because of course, you know, it's easy to do a cat eye or a velvet or whatever on your nails, but there's a lot of different kinds of fun magnetic patterns that you can make that just can't really be applied to the nail with lacquer because the magnets aren't strong enough, or you can't get them close enough, or a variety of other reasons. Okay, so there's that nail. Okay, so for the wait a second, is this one? Yeah, I'm gonna set that aside still because I want to get this one started because this is going to take a little bit to dry. So where is? I'm just gonna do a quick cleanup on this mat so we can do the next thing and not have a big old there we go. Good enough. Doesn't need to be perfect. Okay. Okay, so silly magnet designs. Here's a fun one. Let me just I gotta grab a piece of metal here. Oh, that's right, I already have that set up. Cool. Hang on. I'll be right back, I promise. Alright, here we go. Okay, so I have a variety of just like strips of metal that are designed. They have this adhesive backing on them that I don't use. This is like supposed to, go up on a wall or a cabinet or whatever. These would actually work really well on a Helmer because the length of them is really good. You can't tell how long that is. I don't know. It's like a foot and a bit long, foot and a half maybe. Anyway, it's self-adhesive and magnets stick to it. So we love that. So basically, you can arrange magnets on it, which is a lot of fun if you want to play with weird magnets. So one thing is you can do this with these itty-bitty little roundy guys. These are little spherical magnets. So you can arrange them. You can use other kinds of small weird magnets, like, hang on, oof, these guys. So I have several of these. Let's see. Let's flip that guy over. So we got these weird little ring magnets, itty bitty things. There's lots of different sort of fun little arrangements of magnets that you can make. And so a thing that you can do is, that you can do with decals that you really can't do on the nail, is you can use weird little magnet arrangements like this and like this to make a cool ass decal to go on your nail. So let's show that. Now, one thing that is a bit of a challenge with this is that if you use silicone, I don't know how much y'all have used silicone mats, but they tend to buckle a little bit. You see that little buckle? See in the shadow there, you can see that buckle. They buckle when they get nail polish or thinner on them, and they will eventually, as the nail polish dries, they will flatten back out. You don't see a buckle here because that decal is completely dry. But while they are wet, they will be buckled. And if you have that happen, if you try and use your silicone mat as a decal over top of a smaller magnet or a bigger magnet, it'll work just fine. But if you try and do it over a smaller magnet, it'll buckle enough that it gets too far away from the magnetic field on the small magnets. So I have found for very small, delicate designs like this, rather than using a silicone round, which is always my preference for decals. Otherwise, use a sandwich bag. So, sandwich bag is the way to go. This is, it's the magic right kind of material that polish will actually peel off of reasonably well. So, I don't want to use my, oh, you know what? I'm going to use this one. This is a good one for this. Okay. So let's go ahead and do our first coat on here. Because the thing about the sandwich bag is that it doesn't swell and buckle the same way that the silicone will. It's also a little bit harder to peel, but not impossible. So this would take a couple of layers to get it completely set. Oop, I'm moving it and it's messing up the design, but can you see the magnetic design on there? It's like a grid pattern. It's like a weird elongated grid. So this is how I did. I have a mani that I did this way that ended up really, really cool, and I did it as a decal. So I'm gonna do a little more here. Just gonna do this a little thicker. Because I'm kind of rushing through this. I shouldn't, but I am. Okay, so I'm gonna let that, I'm actually just going to move this off to the side so we can use this other area here. All right, just gotta make sure that I don't move that around too much because it needs to stay nice. All right, so I wanna play with this other set, which I think I probably can use the matte for these. Just guessing. Looks like corn on the cob. You're not wrong. It does look like corn on the cob. Okay, so I think with these guys, the matte should work just fine. And let's see what kind of pattern we reveal when we paint this on. That's kind of interesting. I like to just arrange smaller magnets together and just see what happens. Now, if you don't want to waste a whole lot of magnetic polish doing this, or potentially waste it if you end up not liking it and not being able to use it for a mani, you can get these little magnetic field visualizer things. This one came in a little frame, but it's basically just a thing that shows you, so if you put a magnet behind it, it'll show you what the magnetic field looks like. Flip it around, do the circle. There's the circle one. And then if you were to put a horseshoe style behind it, you can see what the horseshoe looks like. See that interlocking, or that overlapping field in the middle is where the magic happens. It's a great way to test what your weird magnet combinations are going to do. So this is one of those quad-ended thingies. So you can see what each one of those ends does. And you can also see with this that it's really hard to see the inside one, the flower one, and it's the same problem that you have with using, thank you. I'm off to the side here. I'm just going to do another layer on my tiny magnet thing. I don't want to move it because I already messed up the pattern a couple of times by moving it. So I'm just putting another layer on real quick off to the side where you can't see it. So yeah, so with something like this, you can do your magnetic pattern on a decal, and then you can just, once that's dry, you do the exact same thing where you apply it like we did for the other ones. And again, that's, you know, that one was a drag marble done in a velvet style magnet setup. And then, you know, we can do these ones with various different things. Fillet, it does not look like boobs. I'm sorry. Okay, this part looks a little bit like boobs, but it's got too many parts for boobs. I don't know what your boobs look like, but mine don't have that many parts. Okay, so while the magnetic ones are drying, let's go ahead and stick this other one on. It should be dry enough. This is going to be a thinner one because it's just one layer of a creme, and then we did our little upsized stamp design plus our little hand painted design. And I'm gonna put that on my right thumb because that was the whole point of that, was that we're doing stuff that is hard to do on your dominant hand. Doing some hand painting on your dominant hand is very difficult. Sci-fi boobs, yeah. Great. Y'all keeping my streams family friendly. Okay. Now, let that dry a little bit. Okay, let's do it this direction, and we'll just place that on there. It's not the best job I've ever done. I'm getting a little wrinkling on this one, which is fun. It did dry a little more than it really should have, because it was so thin. Try and stretch that out a little bit. And of course it would happen on a creme where it's going to be like the most obvious. Okay. Now, if you have like a really, 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 really strong Z-curve and you end up with a quite thick decal that you're applying and it has a massive fold in it, you can snip the excess material out of the middle of the fold and then just sort of reattach the two edges of it together with a little bit of acetone. Do I need to demonstrate that? Does that make sense? Was I just saying something that sounds like complete nonsense? I should probably demonstrate it. I don't really have a... Now, see, this one is a little too thick to effectively do, or a little too thick, a little too dry to effectively do the pulling away from the edge method. So I am going to pull my scissors out for the free edge here. There we go. All right, so I'm also not as good with my cleanup brush with my non-dominant hand. So this should be fun, especially with wrinkles in there. I really should have not let this dry quite so long. The top coat that I used dries a little too fast. I don't really have a super slow drying top coat, unfortunately. All right, this is gonna be the worst one. That's okay though. We're gonna make it work. It's gonna be fine. That's why I never do decals with just a straight creme too. Like playing on hard mode, it shows every tiny little error. All right, there we go. I have hand-painted nail art on my non-dominant hand. Da da da! Amazing, incredible. The talent, the skill. Okay, I also managed to get freaking polish all over my other hand somehow. How did you do that? Okay, how are you doing here? Are you actually, you can't possibly be dry enough already, can you? It's way too early, right? Oh yeah, it's way too early, for sure. All right, well, we can set that aside. We may not get to actually apply those tonight, but that's okay. But I can, it's dry enough that I can pull away the you can see this is an old one that I had done with a different magnetic, with a different arrangement of the itty bitty little specks. But yeah, that's with them, the top one's with them in a grid that we just did, and then that's with them in like a spiral form. They ended up doing that. So yeah, that you would as well do exactly the same way as we did with all the other decals. It would look awesome. All right, what else we got? I have another one that I haven't used yet. I'm gonna do some little cutouts with this. How about that? Let's do some little cutouts with that. Do I want to use a hole punch or do I want to do strips? Maybe I'll do strips. I'm gonna do strips for this. Couch Potato, you're in awe. Are you in awe of the booby comments in the chat, or are you in awe of the cool magnetic stuff? Okay, so let's do some stripies on one of these here nails. I think that could be fun. This is I really like to do this with decals, especially with fluid art and marble decals, drag marble decals, because it's a really easy, quick and easy way to do just some really kind of unusual, interesting geometric nail art. And or not, sometimes not even geometric. I've done swirlies and stuff. Did I say something at the beginning about rehydrating decals that had dried too long? I did. I talked about that a little bit. We did do that with a couple of the decals, and we tested a couple of things as well. So normally my preferred way to rehydrate decals that have dried a little too long is to just use a regular top coat. Not one that's like a super quick dry one. A regular top coat or a clear coat is a good way to rehydrate. But we also tested thinner, which did rehydrate a bit, but then also dried so quickly that it was not as helpful as you might have thought it would be. But then the one that I was surprised at how well it worked was the Magic Effect for Magnetic Nail Polish. Using that worked very well, with the caveat that it did streak. So with the one that I tried it on, where is that? I've got a whole mess of them here, and these ones kind of stuck together a little bit. Oh boy. Well, yeah, these stuck together a little bit, but maybe you can see it streaked. It caused some streaking of the black, white, and gray pigments into each other. So that was the Magnetic Effect nail polish or top coat from DRK. But it did do an excellent job of rehydrating it. So I think as long as you're only using polishes that aren't as prone to streaking, I think you'd be fine. It's just for the super streaky ones that you wouldn't necessarily want to use that. All right, now they're nice and sticky. Let's go ahead and do some stripes on here. I don't know where my tweezers are, but we're just gonna go without. It's fine. Just gonna do some little stripe action. This is kind of fun. I don't think I've ever done stripes like this before that are just like straight up stripes. It's like my nail is behind bars. Okay. Try and get that fairly solidly on there. And then press cut away the excess. Or you could use scissors if you wanted. I will use scissors on the one that's on the end, I think, because that's just going to be a little easier to do with the overhang. It is possible to do a press cut with an overhang, but it's just very difficult and annoying to do, so. You can also just like fold those under the edge and acetone them into place, or you can use acetone to melt the edge away a little bit. A few different methods for that, but yeah, I usually just, if it's on the tip like that, I usually just cut away the excess. If it's too dry to use the pressure tear that I showed earlier. Okay, whoops, that was too much acetone on there. Do not want that. Okay. I'll get that all melted on at the edges. This tip one, I want to make real sure that it is well and truly melted on with the acetone, because it is on the tip and it is going to have like some slight sort of ridginess. So it's more likely than any of the rest of it to catch on something. So I want to really make sure that it is well and truly attached at the edges there. Otherwise, it's just gonna come off in the shower or something. I mean, I have peel off base coat on underneath my base coat anyway, so regardless, it is going to come off at some point fairly easily, but you know, preferably not before I'm ready for it. All right. Why does this remind me of like Wicked meets The Fifth Element? That's very silly. Okay. I guess I should finish up that last nail, huh? Are you dry enough yet? Are you still too wet? I feel like you're probably still too wet. Oh, you might actually be okay. Oh. I might be able to get away with it. It's got some too wet areas, but okay, we're gonna get enough of it. All right, here we go. Now this is very, very thin, and it's definitely not thick enough to be opaque on my nail as is, but if I put a coat of black on my nail first, and then use that instead of the sticky base to make it tacky so it will stick on there. That will work beautifully. Whoop, too much, too much. First I didn't have enough, then I had too much. Jeez Louise. When you cover the top with your thumbs, they look boob-like? Yes. What black? That's a good black? Yes, it is. It's a very good black. This is Abomination. The Abyss. And I did receive that as a PR a little while back. And I am, in fact, in love with it. It's a very, very good black. If you're careful, you can make it a one-coat black. If you're not careful, you might want a second coat, but generally speaking, I consider it to be one coat. It's very nice, and I like their brush. Actually, he just sent me, I was using it in some of the decals. He sent me his white called The Void just today because I had mentioned in a previous post I had done a mani where I used all his polishes. Not because it was a PR post, it was just like, I just felt like it. But I had to use a white from somebody else because I didn't have a white from him. So he sent it to me, which is very sweet. Abomination Black. Well, oh my god, Couch Potato, a few days ago you had a peely in your ear? Maymay, you've eaten a peely? Do not eat the nail polish. I know you follow Simply. She has told you, do not eat the nail polish. What is wrong with you people? Alright, I think that should be dry enough that we can just go ahead and try and do this in a way where it does not look like boobies. There. Get some interesting curves. Okay, so I had a spot that was trying to form a wrinkle, but because this is not dry yet, I'm basically just sort of stretching it over those areas. Which is the advantage of not letting them dry too much, is that you can actually just stretch it out a little bit. Oh, I've got a wee bubble under there. Now that is a separate problem altogether. Can I melt a tiny hole, let the little bit of air out, and then smooth it down? There we go. You can also use a pin to do that, FYI, if you get a little tiny air bubble. Okay, do our little press cut. And I tend to be a little bit more cautious about the press cut when I'm doing something with a very densely pigmented black. Because it is possible to accidentally shove some black pigment underneath your proximal nail fold, which of course, as we all know, is a huge pain in the butt to clean up. Okie dokie, there we go. And we'll do our little pinch and pull this way. And that gets, you're basically using the edge of your nail as a cutting tool, which works beautifully if you have a little bit of free edge, and if you don't have a little bit of free edge, then just use scissors. You've never been able to save bubbles? Well, try a little bit of acetone on a brush, just very gently, and then press them out, like you just saw me do. That's only for decal bubbles, not for other kinds of bubbles, because it's a very specific context. Other kinds of bubbles, that doesn't work. Why are you suffering together? When you get air bubbles, you just cry and accept your fate. Was the black polish underneath tacky? Yes. Yeah, I had just applied it in a single coat that I guess you missed, and it was sort of just before the point that I would normally paint a second coat. Okay, there we go. So there's our weird magnet decal. I did have a little bit of a mess up in that one area because of the bubbles that happened, but as I was applying it. But I can probably sort of press that most of the way out to minimize the look of it. And then, yeah, it's got kind of an interesting shape. And then I've got that one that I did as a decal, drag marble as a decal in a velvet magnet. And then our little stripes and our little fluid art action. And then the one that we did is a little resizing stamp and some hand painting on a decal to put on your other hand. You have an Aurora magnetic decal planned. Yes, do it. You didn't miss it, you just didn't know how dry it got? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was certainly very, very, very slightly tacky. Like, it doesn't have to be super, super tacky. In fact, if it's too wet, especially if you're using regular polish as your base for a decal that you're using to attach the decal, if it's too thick or too gloopy or too wet, it is going to, instead of being a nice sort of adhesive for the decal, it will end up basically making the decal go mush and slide. So yeah, you kind of want it to the point where if you tap it with your finger, it's not gonna like smush and leave a string, but it is slightly tacky. And yeah, like I said, I usually use the quick dry base or a sticky base, but you absolutely can just use regular base or regular polish. It's just that you have to be a little bit pickier about your tackiness level. That's all. It just has to be ever so slightly tacky. Because the decals will absolutely want to, like, these glued themselves together because they were very slightly tacky at the edges, and now they're married. Like, they have children. They've bought a house in the country. There's no separating these two. And this one had like that one sticky bit, and so it's sticking to everything now too. This one was completely dry and does not want to stick to anybody. They've become one. They're lovers. Look at this fucking pink. I'm not talking about the creme pink. I'm talking about the shimmer. God, that's good. I love that. Okay. All right. Are there any other questions, or is there anything that I have not talked about? Is there anything that I said I was going to talk about and then I didn't yet? Is there anything that you wanted me to talk about and I haven't? Speak now or forever hold your pieces. I'm not doing another decal stream anytime soon. Of course, I end up doing decals with a bunch of streams anyway. There's a little bit of that pink in there. Ooh, baby. That's the very first lumen I ever got. Is the quick dry base good? Do you need it? I don't use it for anything else. I only use it as a sticky base. Yeah, I mean, if what you need is a quick dry base, it's fine. Am I top coating these lovely decals? Yeah, sure, I can top coat these lovely decals. Why the heck not? I'm gonna top coat them. Let's do it. I'm gonna use another Abomination product since I've already mentioned them once in this stream, and I'm already gonna have to put a little PR tag in the comments for it, or in the caption for it. So I might as well use them for something else, right? Yeah, Naiwa, I did correctly read 5-op coat as top coat. So one thing actually with decals is that you don't necessarily always want to top coat them on the nail. That's a thing that I probably should have mentioned, especially with like stamping or magnetics. So if you have, let's say you do a complex magnet base, like this one, and then you decide to stamp something in a highly pigmented white over top of it. There's a couple of ways you can handle this. You want to be able to top coat it, but you don't want to top coat something like this on the nail, because it's going to lose some of the complex fun magnetism. And you don't want to use a regular top coat over a highly pigmented white or black creme because, of course, it's going to streak. And you can use something like a seal glaze or a water-based smudge-free top coat as a buffer between those things. So you can, apply your decal, get everything set up, use your seal coat or your water-based glaze or water-based top coat, and then use a regular top coat. That is one option. Or you can apply your top coat directly onto the decal. So if I was going to do this decal with some stamping on top of it and then apply it, what I would probably end up doing is I would top coat before I ever took this off of the magnet pattern. So I would place it on the magnet pattern, I would do my coats of polish, I would do my top coat, I would let everything dry, then I would do my stamping, then I would do my seal glaze, and then I would top coat again at that point after the seal glaze was on. So, and then I would end up applying it onto the nail and I would not top coat again. All right, so basically you just don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're fucking up your hard work with a top coat, right? After you've applied a decal. Now you can bypass all that by just using a seal glaze, that's fine. But you can also just top coat the decal before you ever take it over to the nail. Totally an option. Can decals smudge when you apply top coat? Yes, that's exactly what you want to try to avoid. So you can top coat before you go, or you can use a seal coat, the seal glaze from DRK, or a water-based top coat like the Apipila No Smudge. So you see, I've actually got a little bit of smudging happening in here because the black that I used in this drag marble was that Abomination, that super highly pigmented black polish. With these two, I didn't have that. I had a fluid art polish instead that's black, and it's not as highly pigmented, but the super highly pigmented black one streaked straight into the it smudged straight into the top coat there. So but yeah, so you do sort of want to, depending on what you're doing, you do want to think about whether you want to top coat the decal before you apply it or not. Although in most cases, you always have the option of using a water-based top coat, no smudge type top coat, before you do your top coat. your regular one. So that's an option. Any other questions? Do you see these cute rings? I have the cutest rings. I just got this turquoise one from Untitled Root. It's there, this place. I just bought this for myself. A little Christmas present from me to me. It's really cute. And I also got this one from them. A little bee. Hashtag not sponsored. I just think it's cute and I just got it, so I'm excited about it. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'm gonna call it. Now, of course, if you think of a question later on, you can always add it in the comments or DM me or whatever. I am going to be posting the VOD on Instagram immediately and on YouTube as soon as I'm able to, which is probably going to be tomorrow afternoon or evening. Yeah, and I've started to, at least on the last YouTube video I did, I actually like put the timestamps in the caption, which I'll probably do with this as well because I kind of jumped around a fair bit, so I think it'll be easier if someone's interested in something in particular. So, yeah. All right. Well, they're not the most cohesive set of nails, but they did hopefully teach you something, or at least amuse you. And I think they're kind of cute. So, and they're coming off tomorrow anyway. All right, thank you everyone for coming and for asking questions and for making suggestions and for hanging out. And I'm gonna see y'all next week. And if you have suggestions for streams for the future, let me know. I'm trying to think if I have anything planned for next week. I don't think I do have anything lined up for next week's stream. So if you have a suggestion, let me know. Otherwise, we'll probably just do like a chill, festive holiday nail art thing or something. All right. Good night, everyone. Goodbye. Want to see some nails? Hey, YouTube, you want to see some nails? Yes, my thumbnail is short. I broke it. It's sad. It's sad and pathetic, but that's okay. All right. Bye.